morning, viewers. Welcome to this yet edition of the Focus on Parliament. My name is Agather, Atuhaire, your host. And today we want to discuss the budgeting process in Parliament, the expectations of Ugandans against what the budget estimates so far show and how the process is going and what we should expect at the end of the day, considering the strapped economy and the economic hardships that Ugandans have been going through, especially due to COVID, but already COVID found an already hard hit economy. To discuss that with me today, I have two panelists. The first one is the lady I had last time. I am glad she came back, the district chairperson for FDC in Mbale. Welcome, Margaret Wokuri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Agatha, and thank you for always having me at the space.
Yes,
and greetings to the viewers.
Thank you for being here at the show, Margaret. The second panelist is my MP, the MP of Sheema Municipality, Katesh. Everyone knows him as Katesh, but he's Dickson Kateshumbwa. Welcome to the show, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Agatha, and good to be here.
Honorable, I'm going to begin with you. You are on the budget committee.
Yes.
And yes, one of the most active members of Parliament now. The budget estimates, the budget framework paper was tabled, the budget estimates also tabled in the House and are being reviewed by the budget committee, as far as I know. What is your view of this budget in relation to what is actually on the ground, the economic situation that is going on, that Ugandans are going through right now?
First of all, we received the Parliament approved the budget strategy and the budget framework paper. And on the basis of that, the ministerial policy statements were prepared and approved by the House. So the next step is for us to, as the budget committee, to examine the ministerial policy statements and look at the budget, the allocations for the next financial year, and see whether it meets the expectations. Now, there are broad concerns that we must look at to be able to address that question you have raised. First of all, is the budget aligned to the National Development Plan 3? I think that's our first point to examine, because the NDP 3 is the strategic document that government has done, and it's on that basis that we also have the promises in the manifesto that addresses the common needs of the people. So we are trying to see whether the alignment is there. The second thing is the structure of the budget. Looking at it at a glance, first of all, on the alignment, it's from the quick analysis, we are not properly aligned to the NDP 3. The allocative efficiency per programs is not 100%. And I think government has given themselves a target. They are comfortable with 60% alignment, which personally I think is quite low. But we will examine details, even go into sub-programs. Now, the second thing is looking at the structure of the budget. For the budget to address the needs of the people, it basically means it must tackle the biggest elephant in the room, which is poverty. Okay?
Yes.
But how do you tackle poverty? It means that your budget must be able to be productive. Now, when you look at the structure, the biggest percent of the budget will go for consumptive expenditure. I think about 60%. And then you have debt repayment taking the second percentage, about 18%. And basically you are left with perhaps less than 20% for development. So that is where our major concern is as Parliament. Very little money left for development, meaning that some of the programs that deal with poverty may not be funded. However, we have the big hope we have is that within that small development expenditure, we have the parish development model. So perhaps if it is implemented properly, then we might get very good, some gains. But I still think that we need to examine the structure of the budget, cut down wastage, cut down consumptive expenditure. We are very disappointed that the biggest and hardest thing that we expected government to do to rationalize government agencies has not taken off. So we still have a very big structure that is consumptive, and all that comes at the expense of development financing. Therefore, it's still early. We started yesterday examining the budget estimates. We hope that we shall try to do our best to see that this budget addresses the needs by looking at allocations. If you see agro-industrialization, less than 5% allocated, and a few others, it's still a bit of a challenge. Then there is still a problem of the, I could call it mindset within government.
Yes.
Where we moved away from sector-based budgeting. We are supposed to go into program-based budgeting. But when you look at the MDAs and ministries, and even some ministers, they are still looking at themselves.
What is the difference?
The NDP3 came up with 20 programs. So our budget is supposed to be program-based. For example, if you look at the aspect of, say, human capital development, it is something that cuts across the ministries. If there is agro-industrialization, you look at that program as one, but you don't allocate a budget of this ministry. You allocate a budget according to the program.
Okay.
Then the activities of the program are performed across different ministries. So there's still a problem of harmonization and siloism, where still ministers are lobbying for their own budget as opposed to the program approach.
Okay, thank you, Honorable. And Honorable, you say there's still time. We shall try our best to make sure that the budget meets the needs, which is the question I want to put to Margaret here. Parliament has the authority. One of its core roles is appropriation, and it has that mandate given to it by the Constitution, by the Public Finance Management Act, by their own rules and many other laws. And you have had the Honorable say, how are you satisfied? Not just this budget, or are we and Ugandans at large satisfied with the process and how Parliament goes about making sure that the priorities are funded, that the right allocations are made to the critical sectors?
Thank you, Agatha. As the Honorable has said, I think the budget is still a process ongoing. So my discussion is going to be based on the figures allocated in the budget framework paper and the appropriation bill that was presented to Parliament. Generally, I see no hope in this budget. There was a time when we were young and the Minister of Finance, I think then was the late Apollo Milton Obote. He was President and Minister of Finance. And then he would go and read the budget and say, the kilo of sugar has been reduced from this, and it starts overnight, you know. So people would really be attentive listening to budgets because they knew the implication. It affected them directly, and then they would feel the impact really directly. Because if you say, this has been reduced from this to this, and it starts midnight, or this has been increased and it starts midnight, there was that impact. Now, when you look at this budget here, the general observations I see is that I said I'm talking from the perspective of the budget framework paper and the appropriations bill. It's the usual story of generic papers, generic figures, the usual sectors getting UPDF or defense, state house. I can see this time water also sneaking in there with 1 trillion. I don't know how it happened. I can see a bit of allocation. That is the development budget, a bit of allocation in the health. And I think as we go into the program, we shall have to go in depth about that allocation in health, because I personally have issues now with this Ministry of Health. Seems it's also becoming a leaking basket for some individuals to siphon the money. So another general observation I see is that a budget generally is a policy supposed to give priority to what is affecting people. And what Honorable said, what is affecting people really now is employment, especially amongst the youth, and the general poverty, too much poverty. So you would want to look at a budget that is trying to address some of these things, trying to address employment issues for the youth. We had the first son saying what the youth need is entertainment and sports. I don't know whether they really need that, or they need more to be aligned. You need more industries so that energy can go into production. You need to boost agriculture so that the rural youth can also be employed in that sector. You need to boost cooperatives. I've seen very little money, trade, very little money allocated there. Tourism, you need tourism, productive sectors like that, so that you can really employ all these youth, those energies, they can get employed, and then you will maybe have less crime, you will have less people being idle, and so on and so forth. You don't see it in this budget. Instead, what you see are, like I indicated, generic figures, money going to State House, money going to defense, money going to Office of the President. I don't know the difference between State House and the Office of the President. Then I was again looking at the figures, and my observation was, wow, I think as we train our children, there are maybe three, because you are supposed to use a budget to reduce inequality in the population. Instead, you have a budget that seems to be increasing inequalities through the budget, the salary allocations. I have looked again at the figures, and I would want to work either in State House or URA or UPDF or some bit of joint medical stores. UNRA, yes. Because those are the only, I think, highly paying entities in this country. The rest of corporations, ministries, and what, they are just limping, So you have State House taking about, what is the money for State House?
About 453 billion.
Then you compare it with the trade and industry. They have only 2 billion for salaries, while the State House they have 218, you know. So you have Ministry of Defense, you have 2 trillion, I think, 2 billion, and then you have in agriculture, they are giving 400 million or something like that. So you see that there is really a disparity in terms of salaries. Then there is also a challenge within even the sectors themselves, you know. So much so that you have joint medical stores, for example. Their salary, and I did some little research, and they say
Joint or national?
Joint medical stores.
Okay.
They have about 145 employees, and they are taking a salary of 507 billion plus. Then you have Mulago Hospital, which is employing about 2,103 or something like that people, and they are taking 65 billion people per annum, you know, in terms of salary. So you look at this budget that is just increasing the inequality in the country, you know, and yet the objective of the Constitution is that there should be fairness, there should be balance, between individuals, between regions, you know. So that is the challenge with this budget. Then maybe we also look at the development part of it, like the Honorable has pointed out. In terms of development, again, there are the priority areas have not been given. Agriculture, tourism, and trade, industry, they have not been given priority. Instead, you see development costs going again to President's office. I don't know what is in the President's office that need to be developed, where they have allocated about 9 billion. Then you have again the development expenditure for State House is 218 billion as compared to the trade. Development budget for trade is 2 billion and the tourism is 9 billion. And the State House is 218. What is being developed there in the State House, you know? So these are some of the things that you can look at and say the focus really in the country, the focus is not really about getting people out of the poverty they are in. The focus is not about alleviating people from the stress post-COVID, you know, because coming from the FDC party, when we put in our manifesto, we indicated that there was need for post-COVID provision, you know. Some of the things really that the country is going through. We appreciate that wheat could have been coming from Ukraine and Russia, and then the fuel and so on, which has impacted on the cost of fuel, and then making sure that but then again, the commodity rises come after again a situation where people have been impoverished by COVID. So as the FDC, we had indicated that there was a need for a post-COVID plan, where you have maybe to work with landlords and make sure you subsidize things like water and electricity costs. Maybe you provide some little comeback package for people in smaller industries like these women who sell matoke or cook food, the hoteliers that had been closed, so that they are back. But now, even the money that was supposed to, that one-off money that was supposed to be given to people, it didn't go to people. So you really Personally, I think there is no hope in this, as usual. The money is, because for me, I see defense, state house, the ministry, the presidency as one entity, and then they are taking all the money, and that is money, of course, used for patronage and the desire to stay into state house.
Thank you, Margaret. And Margaret brings out what the issue that has been at the fore. Every time, every budget cycle, unfunded priorities. So people would expect sectors like agriculture, sectors like education and health, and tourism maybe funded, because you know that they bring in more than what you put in. Agriculture, for example, employs about 68% of Ugandans. It brings in, it contributes 23% to the GDP, and over 30% export earnings is from agriculture. But agriculture, as we speak, its budget is not even 3% of the national budget. I think it's about 2.6%, way below the recommended 10% of the national budget. So, Honorable, my question to you is, what is Parliament going to do? Because it has that power. At least the law gives it that power. Should we expect it to make government fund the areas that are more critical, that rather than the wastage that we see on one or two entities that we don't think are that really important for Ugandans? They are important for a few people, but not the general population.
Agatha, thank you very much for that question. And you see, there are things that we need to first put in perspective. First of all, the total budget estimates is around 47.2 trillion. Okay? The resource envelope. Out of which 25 is expected from the local revenue generation. So we are not funding our budget even by 80%. So we have to do a lot of borrowing. I have seen the statement by the minister. We are going to do, go back into the local market. Domestic borrowing is going to increase, which has a problem on the private sector, because it crowds out the private sector in the market. Now, that's the situation we have as a country. And even borrowing cannot exceed the commitment in the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility of 53, I think 53 point something %. So for you to finance the resource envelope, either you have to generate money locally from revenue, or you borrow, or both. Domestic revenues are not increasing. We don't expect URA to collect the 25 trillion realistically. And therefore, of course, government must do something about our capacity to generate local revenue, largely through indirect taxes. And that the indirect taxes can only increase if there is increased consumption. And increased consumption is as a result of increased disposable income. Your people, your sisters and brothers in Chizuba parish, their ability to consume more soda or more beer means more revenue. But if they are poor, or their disposable income does not enable them to double consume from their current capacity, then you will not expect revenues to increase. So that's the situation we are in. So it's an issue of the chicken and egg. We must deal with poverty to increase what? Revenue. Once we have revenue, then we can be able to undertake all these things that we want to do. However, we need to look at what we have and how efficient can we use it. If you have very little money, how do you use it? Wastage, we all agree. This is a non-partisan. My views may not be politically extreme as
extreme as Margaret.
As Margaret, because when I'm discussing issues of economics or budget, I put on my professional hat and less of a politician. But the biggest issue also we need to understand as politicians and Ugandans is that we are implementing the National Development Plan 3. I think we are in the 3rd year of implementation. That plan is looking at programs. But the debates we have, and I've said this, is that even government itself, because I was chair of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Budget, the PACOP, and I saw the ministers who appeared before our committee. I was chairing the public sector transformation. They still think siloism. So, for example, when we are discussing agriculture, we will look at only the amount that is perhaps tagged to agriculture directly. But there are very many enablers of agriculture that are being funded through the budget. So if you have done water for irrigation programs under the program of natural resource, environment and water management, that irrigation program is going to support agriculture. But it is not directly under the Ministry of Agriculture as a budget item. So when people look at that, when you are looking at roads, community access roads, they are all enabling agriculture. Even the parish model we are talking about, we are going to appropriate 100 million per parish. And it is mainly targeting people who are involved in agriculture. So whatever it will do, the biggest percent we expect it to be agriculture processing or value addition, marketing, export. So there are very many components. So if we debate issues of the budget based on sector, we lose the big point. Because even security, Margaret is talking about, governance and security is one of the programs that is taking a big chunk, I think 23%. But is governance and security relevant to other sectors like agriculture, education? Yes. So you must fund it. If we are doing roads in DRC and we are deploying people there to have peace, is DRC our biggest market? Yes. If our people are able to produce goods, we are planning to do some small industries in Sheema, targeting the market in DRC. So if there is peace and security in DRC, your agriculture exports will go. So for me, roads, if you look at the roads that are connecting the export markets, they are under the infrastructure development budget, integrated transport infrastructure services. It's a program, but they are enabling exports. And the exports are coming out of manufacturing and agriculture production. So we need to, I think the development plan has not been properly unveiled and discussed first of all, within cabinet itself, but also in parliament and in the public. That explains why even government, sometimes I have been challenging them, you align everything to the development plan, we will get there. In fact, even parliament, we also need to align ourselves because we have sector committees. We are still having the sector committees and sessional committees. Yes. But they look at sectors. So we have a problem. You have a minister who comes, he talks about his area, but then there is another minister where where that issue that has been raised actually falls. But if we are made according to the sector, according to the programs, maybe our oversight role will be easier. Tourism development, Agatha, I'm a player in the tourism sector. One of the biggest problems is people to look at tourism as a standalone item. We have national parks where you don't have communication, where you don't have water. So if you look at tourism sector, the interventions actually cut across different sectors. And so if government does not remove siloism and work as a team to look at this program and run through it and look at where are the intervention points and by who, then we shall continue to have a problem.
But my question, Honorable, is what should come first? Should you first care more about the market for agriculture produce in Congo before actually the production, the process of producing what we want to sell? Irrigation, for example, we have had long spells of droughts in this country, and we still have a government that talks about that irrigation photo that has been around for a long time. Shouldn't we first deal with resolving those problems that are affecting the agricultural sector and even tourism? Because tourism, let's talk about it too. It has huge potential. It is given about 180 billion as budget, yet NDP3 that you refer to talks of at least a minimum of about 600 billion as budget. So why don't we first deal with the core, that before you deal with the market, let's even first have agriculture that is sustaining us enough, and we are.
I agree with you. You see, it is an issue of synchronized planning. And I admit that there is a problem of planning. I give an example. We have built an export center at the airport, a very big export processing center. But then we have an airline, okay?
Yes.
Which is supposed to fly Ugandans and products. The Airbus, they are still packed. How many months? You are not flying to India. The other day I was talking to one of the senior diplomats from India. He was saying that we are wondering why Uganda Airlines is not moving. London? Now, by the time you have done these economic investments, these infrastructure investments, because transport is part of infrastructure, you must have done the whole value chain planning. I would have expected, much bigger mobilization of, say, farmers who are producing fresh produce. Our beautiful, very sweet pineapples should be flying to Dubai every day, as our airline goes. If you have a scheme like Mubuku irrigation, it's a very big potential for vegetable produce. And that one is a direct market, China. So I agree, partly, and that's why I'm thinking that I'm still insisting that if we were planning, going according to the National Development Plan, we look at these programs, we look at the interlinkages, then these problems would be ironed out. But if a ministry starts a project, there is a project called Guru Logistics Hub. It's being done. Big project. But it's going to end. Now, the rail infrastructure, to connect it, you'll find it is in unfunded priority. So how is the cargo going to move to that hub so that you are able to export to South Sudan, to Chad, etc.? So it's an issue of synchronized planning. We are trying as Parliament to try and align this thinking so that we have something.
Do you have the power to do that?
We do. For example, parish development model. If it succeeds.
I like how you say if it succeeds.
Yes. Yes, and I'm going to make sure that in Sheema it succeeds. And I invite you to to make sure that you go to your parish and sensitize. But I was telling the Minister of Trade and other ministers that if parish model succeeds in the next 12 months, we are going to have a problem.
If it succeeds,
Yes,
have a problem.
It will result into another problem. I give you an example. If we double or triple production of eggs as a result of so many parishes producing eggs, I mean poultry, like we want to do in Sheema, then the issue of the market. Now, if you have Kenya blocking your eggs and you have not opened, negotiations, got guarantees, then you are going to have farmers struggling. And it becomes a discouraging factor for the next year. So that's why even now the roads in the DRC become very, very what? Important. And security, that you can be able to flood all this success into the other markets. But it requires the relevant ministry. If you are a Minister of East African Community Affairs, you are a Minister of Trade, at the back of your mind, you should be planning for the market for the increased production under parish model. That means the government must have statistics. When people start producing, what are the enterprises? What is the estimated number of chicken? In Sheema, we are planning 100,000 birds in the next 2 years. I am thinking, and the farmers have asked me, Katesh, will you get us a market? It's a worry. So someone must be thinking, if you are the minister in charge of this, what bilateral negotiations are going on. We are happy Rwanda has opened. We can be able to access the market. So it's about synchronization, planning, and making sure that we plan ahead. We are not caught by surprise. But me, I have hope. I am not like my sister here.
After 40 years.
I think that the new parliament, the 11th parliament, I have a lot of faith in it. 80% are new, average age 40. They know what they went through to get into parliament, and they know people's problems. And we will be able to question some of the things that don't make sense to us. And so far we are doing that. That's why we are reading through this budget, we are examining it, and we are asking questions. So, Margaret, do you need to have hope?
No way.
I think let me bring in Margaret after the break, because we might be cut short. Stay with us. We'll come back and we will interrogate more the things that Honorable Katesh says, and especially the faith he has in the 11th Parliament. We will be right back. Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back from that break. And we are continuing with this discussion. Before we went for a break, I had wanted Margaret here to respond to some of the things or elaborate more on some of the things Honorable Katesh was saying. But the first one is the faith in the 11th Parliament. And I'll give you just a small, in regards to the budget. The Committee of Parliament on Presidential Affairs recommended that they add the office of the president that she has talked about so many times, 77 billion. Money for RDCs, money for 77 billion altogether. I have not seen the committees make those rigorous recommendations in these other places. So I am wondering that, did this committee see that really it is important to add more money to this sector? But well, it's too early to judge that, considering that we have not reached the final discussion on all the ministerial policy statements. But Margaret, what do you think about the 11th Parliament and their ability or capacity to change some of the things that the executive is doing that we think are not really taking this country where it is supposed to go.
Thank you, Agatha. Incidentally, Honorable Katesh said that he will not be as extreme as me because he's professional. Actually, I'm also professional. And for me, by the way, that is where this country has taken us. You know, dismissing views, some of our views. Because I can remember that I have...
No, he was not dismissing.
Not him, but the government. The government. It has been so dismissive about some of the views that come from opposition members. You know, so much so that the other time when we were here, I told you that some of these things, when we talk, when we say, please government, make pro-people policies, it's because when we know that if things backfire, we are all going to be into it. And so for this country, we've seen it go down, and we keep... What makes some of us get some sleep is that, well, you put it on record that I said the truth, you know. Whether people pick it up or not, that's a different thing.
Whether it achieves anything or not.
Yeah. And I really want to sympathize with my young brother here, Honorable Katesh, and maybe a few of them who have a heart for this country. They are by the time 2 years.
We are assuming you have a heart for this country.
They have no other country.
2 years down the road, we might be here and you are going to be heartbroken because maybe you are, I don't know where you come from, but the trajectory of this, the politics of this country is just perpetuating power. As long as something will keep somebody there in power, they will do it. If you bring a view that is going to propel people, that is friendly to people, that is going to help people, as long as it doesn't keep the dynasty going on, it will not work. Now, and that's what I want to get back to the budget, because Honorable was saying, now you see, security is very important. You know, I come from a feminist background, and there was that policy of trickle down, trickle-down policy where you go in a household and identify one person, give resources, hoping that the resources will go. And usually it was, of course, the heads of the families, men. So you give the man money thinking he was going to look after the wife and the children. After so many years and then review, it was discovered that the trickle-down theory does not work, you know. Because the man you given the money in the house will either go and drink or will marry a second or third wife or do anything, you see. So that's why some of the things that women say, no. Rather than looking at empowering the head of the house, look at everybody in that house, you know. So this issue also of thinking that you are going to empower security, so that because security affects these other sectors. Because I also want to ask, yes, is agriculture affected by security? Yes, because when you are running, you can't go and dig. But does agriculture also affect security? Yes, because there is food security. Actually, it is even more important, you know. You cannot claim, talk about peace when you are sleeping on a hungry stomach. Actually, they say hungry person is an angry one. So many of these security issues right now, you see the increase in insecurity around Kampala here, around across the country. We are experiencing the effects of post-COVID. People are so poor, you know, and then they are now using pangas, going to wake up people. You give us money. The unemployed youth who have been chased away from the Kampala streets and so on. So all those things, you know, it's because many people have been denied their livelihood. And here we are saying, first sort the livelihood. Security is paramount, but livelihood is very, very, very key. Otherwise, then you will have maybe every person having a security person to monitor that one, you know. So it is important that we have this money. If it is for agriculture, let it go there. Now, when you talk about, you look at the budget expenditure again, I think I was looking at some figures where I think I laughed. Why? Because some of these agencies, like it was the coffee development, narrow, Nagric, animal production, fisheries, industry, and so on and so forth. Their salary allocation, you know, they have grouped them. The salary for narrow, for Nagric, for animal production and fisheries, for research and industry, technology and genetic transfer, 60 billion salary, all those entities. Then you go to President's Office, State House, 453. So, really, what are these people doing? Because these are the brains of this country. The narrows, the animal production, those are the people who should be comfortably paid so that they do a lot of research. And we are talking about market, you know, we are talking about market. And the reason we don't have market for our crops, for our animals, for our beef, is because the things we produce are substandard. And the people who are supposed to be putting the brains in improving these things are being paid peanuts. Money is going where, I don't know, where people use the money for throwing parties, for doing this and the other, you know. So really, we are in trouble, and indeed, I think I want to agree with you that before going to look for opening up roads in the Congo, first teach these people. By the way, I don't even agree that we don't have market. The market is there, only that our quality is very, very poor. So if these people are organized, like what the cooperatives used to do, you give giving farm implements, you know, seeds, that is if it is crop, or maybe giving breeds in terms of animals that are quality. Then you teach the farmers how to grow these, either the chicken, or how to produce the good eggs that can go on market. If it is plants, don't use this fertilizer, maybe use organic, and all these things need money. And so you are not just going to get security money and put in agriculture. No, you need to put it in agriculture and then put there so that these people are helped. If they produce quality things, then you will have the planes carrying our things and taking to either United Arab Emirates or UK, or, you know, yes, something like that. But as long as we continue to produce very poor quality things, we will look at ourselves, you know. Maybe we will look at some DR Congo, but that's not enough. Now, I also want to talk about what Honorable Kateshumbwa talked about project funding, that we've moved away from sector to projects now. Program. Yeah. Yes, some of these programs, and I see again a lot of excitement about parish model. This country, you know, sometimes I want to think it's like being in this country is like having married a man. You know, you marry, you are all young. In 1986, that is, you marry, you are all young, and you find a man and he's promising heaven on earth. 10 years down the road, nothing has happened. Says, okay, give me another chance, or 20 years, nothing. Now it is 35, we are going to 40 years. If we had children, they are grown, they are also getting into marriage, and the same man is now, hey, and the same man is promising, you see, give me an opportunity. This time this is going to work. It will not work. Why am I saying so? There are so many projects that have been brought. Let me use an example of WEPA. I was reading the Auditor General's report, and there is a lot of mismanagement. According to that report, I think, is it only 3,000 and about 600 women have been reached out of, is it the targeted 10,000, you know, or either women or groups. But you see, that's not enough. Then the report continues to say, many of the monies that were lent to the women groups, the money was lent without even MOUs to those groups. The report continues to say money that was recovered has never been redistributed. It is lying on the account. Why? Either because of the capacities of the people managing the project, or the indifference of the people managing the project. So I don't see even any difference with this parish, you know, this parish model. I know it is Honorable Suruma in his book. I even forget is it who propelled the idea of the parish model, and his view is that planning level should be at the parish, because the sub-county is too far away from people. But at the parish, at least you can get statistics about the number of people and so on and so forth. So all these things, like instead of saying every sub-county should have a health facility, put it in a parish. Instead of saying every sub-county should have a secondary school, put it in a parish, you know. But now what I'm hearing about the parish model, actually much of it, I know that there are also other components of production, but there is hype around money, you know. Parish model, 1 million this time, then 18 million is coming, then I hear people saying, those parish chiefs saying, but what will 18 million do? For me, I'm going to select my 5 people and give them, you know. People have either been used to free money, they think this is another chance for them to just get that money. And I can tell you, they will take that money, they will not pay back, and nothing will be done, because there are also capacity issues in the ministries. And for me, I want to challenge Honorable Kateshumbwa and the people who are interested. What exactly is wrong with the people in the ministries? And why do you continue giving those people money? You know? I talked about the Ministry of Health. They have been given, I think, some very good amount here for development. I know it is very little. Is it about 2 million? About 2 trillion? 1 trillion for development. I know it is very little money compared to the challenges in the Ministry of Health. UCU, there are no, you know. I mean, ICU, no beds, even emergency, the report. When you read the Auditor General's report, the emergency room where accident victims across the country, even the basic medicine, by the way, is not there. So this money is very little. But again, the challenge I have is that even the little money that is given, sometimes it is lying there, you know, it's never used. For example, the Ministry of Health that I'm talking about, that 3 years ago, they signed a contract with a construction company supposed to build the 60 units. 60 units of 60 units of houses for I think medical doctors and nurses and so on at 30 billion shillings, and the money was released. 3 years down the road, they said that even the foundation is not yet finished. That is Ministry of Health. The same Ministry of Health is the one that advanced 300 billion to the Vinci ready now. And again, we also see just wire mesh on the site. Nothing is taking place there. So for me, Agatha, I'm asking this Ministry of Health, is it serious? Do they have serious people? Or is it also an entity just where taxpayers' money is being siphoned? Because this an autocratic government can do anything. They can place their people there, and then, you know, so much so that every money that comes, it goes just through like you would pour water into a basket, you know. So they are either capacity issues or it's an issue of indiscipline. Because again, when you also look at, again, the Auditor General's report, it says that sometimes, actually half of the other day I saw MPs mad at Kasaija. He was saying, how could you sign this Vinci agreement without a feasibility study? Then I was laughing and said, I think many of us are really ignorant, because the Auditor General's report says half of some of those projects that are passed by government, there is no feasibility study.
Thank you.
And what happens is that because of that, then it turns out there is duplication, then sometimes there is no capacity to implement, and then because of that, the money lies there, it accumulates interest, and then we have to pay.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. Let me pick up from what is the special about the parish development model, and from the fact that even Honorable Kateshumbwa, the ifs he suggested, he's also skeptical about it. Why didn't the 11th Parliament that you think might do better than the previous ones, why did it ask about the accountability of the previous programs before? Because I remember the discussion of parish development model came to Parliament, and in fact, I think some MPs were asking about the policy and how is it going to be operationalized. But there have been programs before where money has been allocated. You have Youth Livelihood Program, Operation Wealth Creation, and Tandikwa. There are so many, we can't even count them. And we don't, up to now, we don't know what did they achieve, what did they fail to achieve, was there value for money, who is accountable, who can answer these questions of why hasn't the 11th Parliament at least started from there and said, why don't you first table on this here, what has happened to these previous programs?
Well, I want to say that one of the first programs that we looked at as the 11th Parliament actually was the Myoga. If you recall, the Speaker of Parliament, then the Deputy Speaker then, Right Honorable Mong, actually sent us on recess to go and examine the success of a Myoga. And we came and we had a debate in the House. And as a result of the debate, the government was directed to do certain things. And I think in most of our constituencies now we have seen the Minister of State for Microfinance actually going to all these constituencies and trying to take corrective measures. So at least we can take responsibility for what we found in space. And if you follow that debate on Myoga, you can actually appreciate that this Parliament is very keen on making sure that these development programs don't become like the past. And that's why, even when we came to the parish development model, we tasked that before we could even talk about the money, we must have a policy. Because most of those programs they are talking about never had policies. They just, even like a Myoga, I remember during campaigns, it was a problem. Many people are claiming it, candidates. Now we have a policy that has been laid before Parliament. We are going to examine it. There are people we are going to hold accountable for that program. It is the first of its kind where it is tackling, which has brought equality across the whole country, because every parish will get the equal amount of money. I'll talk about the other pillars. Of course, it has to be refined because parishes are not the same. Agatha, your parish is one of the biggest parishes, if you didn't know, in the municipality. If I lost it, if I don't get
that's why it is important for you guys.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest parishes. It can't get the same amount of money than the parish next door, Sheema, which has maybe 30% of the population. So those are the things we shall iron out along the way. But we demanded for a policy. Cabinet discussed. I am aware that some in cabinet they were not even, some of them did not want, policy and what have you. But we insisted as Parliament, and it came through. Parliament, cabinet approved it. It has been tabled for the House. That's one. Two, we are going to allocate the money, and we know this amount of money is going to this parish. Sheema Municipality, which I represent, has 23 parishes. So I know there will be 2.3 billion going into Sheema. So what is my role as a leader? First of all, accountability. Has that money arrived? Or it was eaten at the headquarters? That one is a very easy equation. I don't need Auditor General. Secondly, what has it done on the ground? So the role of leaders also cannot be wished away. We have to take responsibility. Now that this is very open, it's not like a pronouncement somewhere by the president to say, I will give this and this. This is a program. We are all talking. So we should take responsibility as leaders to make sure that we carry out our oversight mandate and make sure it succeeds. There has been a gap at the leadership level. We all have to admit, because we cannot blame executive all the time, but us as leaders, elected people, we should be able to follow up. Emioga, I had to inspect every group in my constituency to make sure I know whether the money reached, what it's doing. So that one is so I have hope that this money will arrive, but I have questions around the parish model, the conceptualization around the 7 pillars. So the other pillars, other than the financial inclusion pillar, which is 100 million, I have taken a back seat in terms of the planning process and budgeting process. And again, it's an issue of mindset, conceptualization, right from government to Parliament to everywhere. Because the whole concept about pillars, for example, the social services pillar, is that education, you must have a school at every parish. You must have water. You must have a health center. But the budgeting and planning is not according to the parish model. So that's an issue we have challenged government. I asked one of the ministers one day, I said, you tell me how many parishes have water and how many don't have. And how many are you planning to make sure they have access to water? Definitely, that answer is not there. So it's still a challenge for government to have consistency between the development plan, the parish model, especially on the other pillars, to make sure it is aligned. It is also true that some of the previous programs have not been assessed properly to see the impact. And my friend here mentioned the issue of Auditor General's reports. I also have a problem with the Auditor General because they also must change their mindset of auditing and giving a financial qualified reports. They must move into value for money audit.
They do. They do.
Yeah, but what happens now? We have been seeing Peter Ogwang moving around the country. He goes to Bujiri,
He
finds
stopped. We don't know what happened.
No, he is. Maybe they didn't have the release. But he goes to Bujiri Hospital. They tell you that the whole paint was eaten. Now. But then you have Auditor General's report, qualifying. You get it? So I also think
hasn't spared it.
I also think that the Auditor General and all the oversight agencies must look at programs and assess the value for money. Because I have been in public service, I also see the kind of queries that come out. They are very, very, some of them are very insignificant, but also strong recommendations to hold people accountable.
Recommendations, what can they do, Honorable?
Yeah, strong recommendations that, for example, recently we had a parliamentary committee on trade investigating Teso Fruit Factory.
Yes.
And the findings were very, very, very disturbing. We had the whole debate in the House. But you may find, actually, the Auditor General has audited before and everything is okay, or there is a qualified report. So my thinking is that some of these flagship programs, like that one, the oversight agencies must be able to go deep, look at what is happening. But I can assure you that the current 11th Parliament is not, because we know we are still around. If God gives us health, most of them are fairly young, 40. I don't think most of them want to serve one term and go. They still have
no one
political
ever
ambitions.
wants to serve one term.
And they are not going to allow these things to just happen the way they were happening. And when I saw the debate of Emyoga, that's why I told you I have faith. The other issue on parish model is the preparation of the public. That's where there is also a very big gap. Mindset change. Some of our people, they will get that money, like you have said, and eat it. And there's nothing to show. Some people think it is a thank you. Some people have not understood what business is. Recently, I had a program in my municipality where I had a 5-day training of over 1,000 people on business, entrepreneur, So people are not trained in terms of business, but also technically. If you are going to borrow money, 10 million rare chicken, what are the technicalities? So that preparation is not adequate, in my opinion, and it might result into less results. So what did we do? Some leaders like us, we are trying to talk to our people, but I think government still have a responsibility. There seems to be excitement about the money running, let's put the budget, but without preparing people and without support, extension support. You've talked about narrow research into the quality seeds, in issues of fertilizers, adequate fertilizers, good breeds. You might have challenges of productivity. So yes, I support the program. I am happy about it. I will do whatever I can to make sure that in my constituency it works. But I have some questions which have not been answered. And
so it's another trial and error, this one?
Well, you can say that, but I think at the end of the day, let's give it a chance. We shall come back to discuss the results. But what I'm happy about is that even when the success is not achieved, money will remain in that parish. At least it will arrive. You get it?
To who? To the parish chief, right?
It will be in the local economy of the parish. That's what I'm saying. Within the law economy.
As you talked about strong recommendations from the Auditor General's office and many other things, I saw Margaret note down very strongly. Maybe she has something she wants to respond.
Yes, I think if Honorable had persuaded me to buy into the parish model, now I think I am 100% convinced that this thing is not going to work, the parish model. Why? Given what you've said. You see, he has talked about the pillars of the parish model. And that's why I told you right from the beginning that people are only excited about money. But there are other things, if the parish model is going to work, there are other things that must be in place. The human resource, the roads, maybe the quality seeds, the knowledge generally of production, and so on and so forth. Now, my little knowledge about policy is that if you come up with a policy, you must evaluate it and then look at the cost implication, you know. How much is this policy? The policy might be good, by the way, but you must look at the cost implication. Do you really have the resources to effect that policy? And then you evaluate it vis-a-vis the other policies, you know. So now we are talking about the parish development model. I see it needing huge sums of money, which is not there. The model could be good, but the money is not there to make those roads, to train the human resource, to do research into what works here and what doesn't work there, and so on and so forth. Because even if you bring the 1 billion in Sheema,
23.
Is it municipality?
23.
What is it? The constituency?
2.3 billion.
Yes.
Sheema
municipality. As long as these other supporting things are not there, it will not work. It will not work. Yes, you are saying the money will go into the constituency. We have just said here about the trickle-down theory. Yes, maybe it will remain in a few pockets. But people, the local person who is the target of the parish development model, 2026 we shall be here. Maybe the figures of the poverty levels would have now increased from 21%, which it is today, to maybe 27 or 30%.
They will have reduced.
No. That one you.
Okay.
Now the other thing I wanted to say about the Auditor General.
Yes.
I think there could be a bit of compromises here and there. But I think there is adequate information. The Auditor General, I think, does the auditing and brings these reports to Parliament. And for me, like you put it, I would expect Parliament not to give some of these ministries or departments money before they have
been cleared.
Before they have cleared what the Auditor General has spoken about. Let's start there, you know. So the other things, yes, they could be no, but for me, as long as you say, okay, this money was given to you, you did not implement. There is an instance that money was given to released for printing in the Ministry of Education now. Money was released for printing materials. And then the districts did not print the materials. So the Auditor General says either the money is on the accounts or it was used for other purposes. So now, why should money again be given to the Ministry of Education before that money that was given in billions is cleared? First of all, we need to know where is it? Is it there? If it's not there, where did it go before money is allocated, you know? Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret. Honorable Katesh, I'm going to ask you 2 questions because we are coming to the close. The first one was what Margaret said about inequalities in salaries. I was doing some research where I went to different districts. I also went to Sheema. And an engineer at one of the districts said, you know, at the end of the day, we cannot work like this. We go to school, do the same course, engineering, but an engineer who goes to the district earns less than 2 million, when an engineer at UNRA
Yes.
earns 20 million. They do the same work. Can Parliament look into this? And this whole making other sectors and departments not attractive when they are as crucial. Can Parliament look into how budget and the salaries that are allocated, how they can be harmonized, at least so that there's a semblance of...
And Agatha, just to chip in a little, a doctor who is working in joint medical stores maybe also earns 20 million, while a doctor at Mulago is going away with a paltry maybe 1.5
yes,
or 2
but I'll ask
million.
the other one after
You
that.
see, that's why I said that the disappointment I have is that the program of rationalization of government agencies has not taken off. I think actually government has forgotten about it. Because I know that Parliament had issues, they put up a committee, a report was done, but that program was meant to harmonize. First of all, cut down on so many agencies. If you look at commissions, there are so many.
Authorities, whatever, yeah.
And once that is done, then you can actually maybe rationalize the salaries as well. But realistically, we also must know our resource envelope is small. Me, I think the message to Ugandans, we should widen our options. You know, I see many people in my place, they're applying for, when they apply for these sub-county jobs, they are all fighting to get
they pay money
small sub-county
at
job.
the district.
And you look at the future, it's not much that can transform this person and this household. So what are the options? I'm from my background of finance and economics, I think we need to develop the entrepreneurial class that can actually create jobs and not look at government. If you are an engineer and all you are doing is applying one district after the other, and then after you get it, fighting so hard, then the problem is the salary is too small, you start lamenting. Where does that take us? Definitely Uganda is not going to pay like United States of America.
We are not talking about paying more. We are talking about one earning 1 million and the other 40 million.
Yeah, I've said that there needs to be rationalization, but also rationalization also take into aspects of the kind of work that someone has to do. If the district there is no work, then you don't need all those resources. You know, Agatha, if you got all these local governments, you'll find that most of them are operating at 60% labor force capacity. You get it? So you imagine if it's actually filled, they are operating, the efficiency levels are down. Even if you implement 100%, it's the same results you're going to have. So for me, rationalization would have helped us. It has not taken place. We need to have it. But then there has to be a government pay reform structure that looks at all this. Because when we are looking at when I was chairing PACOB, we interacted with the public service minister. I remember we calculated a person who is at an entry level in government who lives in Wokuri and comes to work. He actually works in negative at the end of the month. He cannot sustain his basic need, which is shelter, clothing, and food, plus transport, because he has to come to work. So it is true, and there has to be a solution.
Okay, so now, and that ties in with the second question I wanted to ask you. You were talking about how much we expect to generate from our local revenues to finance the budget. Now, that brings me to a question of tax, the tax base, or our tax to GDP. From your background as a taxman, what is being done correctly or wrongly to address this? Because I am wondering, if you have a population that is already struggling with basic needs and you are adding more taxes, OTT today, data tax tomorrow, mobile money tax, are you encouraging or advancing entrepreneurship that you're talking about that would solve these problems of jobs and salaries? Or are you actually, how is it supposed to be done? Also address us in relation to the tax and revenue bills that were tabled in Parliament recently.
You see, over the years, some of us who have been in that in different roles, particularly in the tax roles, the argument we always presented has always been that taxation is an outcome, or the taxes is as a result of very many things that take place. I am very glad that finally, this year, everybody in government, nobody has appetite to raise any tax.
Nobody has appetite.
Has appetite.
They know the cow they are milking is almost
because the cow has reached a point where now the arguments that we used to have come to fruition. Because you are blaming, your tax base is low. Tax to GDP is low. You are not doing enough. You even blame, corruption. But you don't look at the issues. You just pick the easy picks to say, there is corruption in URA, there is people are not working, when you actually are ignoring the real issues. In the whole government, for over the years, everybody, 99% of the people talk about the expenditure, the money.
Yes.
In fact, even the talk shows I've had, even this one, we started with the money. So every minister is looking at his budget. No one thinks about where the money comes from. And that has been the problem. So you blame URA and you have not put in place things that can enable URA to do what? Because if you look at the tax register, it's less than 3 million. Why? The structure of the economy, the biggest population is in agriculture. Agriculture is contributing less than 10% of the GDP. So you have a very unproductive population that cannot be taxed. So now that we have reached the point where we cannot raise taxes because it will be problematic, here's the other conversation. What do we need to do? The ministry, I've always argued, must think about tax policies that are not necessarily going to raise tax, but are going to create an environment which will yield more tax in years to come. If the parish model succeeds, for example, more people get more increased household income. They will consume.
Yes.
Once they consume, then you have indirect taxes. Simple. But if you think that the URA will do a magic when the biggest population you have are not productive, you have unemployment. You imagine if you have more industries. Now we have about 5,000 something industries. If we have 10,000, you have more and more people working. What does it mean? If I look at my own constituency, we've been trying to mobilize people to come up. We put up some small industries targeting to employ people. If we can create 2,000 jobs in the municipality, the town will be active. People will drink beer, they will drink soda, and that is excise duty, that is VAT. Simple equation.
Yes.
So before you put a neck around URA, blame URA for not doing enough. The economy, URA is not responsible for the economy to a larger extent. The economy is the responsibility of the executive, the Minister of Finance, the Parliament, to make sure that the money we are putting in place does what? Does its job. If we have increased productivity, increased jobs created, people will have disposable income and they will consume, and then you have tax.
Thank you. You were asking a question earlier of which comes first. It's a chicken and egg, but now you have actually nailed it. What comes first is that you empower the population.
You feed the chicken.
Exactly, to get the taxes from them. But when you come and milk a cow that you have not fed every other day, it finally collapses. Your parting shots as you respond to what Honorable said about
Thank
taxes.
you. Yes, I want to agree with him. Maybe just on why people keep on looking for jobs. Either an engineer applying from one district to another.
I have told you, they go and pay bribes of about 10 million for a job of 500,000.
Yeah, it's because
desperation.
It's because some of the other sectors are not working. For example, the reason we come here and talk about agriculture is that the bulk of the population is employed in agriculture.
Yes.
So really, if you empower the agricultural sector, then you are going to have more people. By the way, if you went to the village there and where I come from, maybe my village, either Namalogo or Olwa, so where I come from, and you said a big bunch of matoke is going to be, we shall bring you 50,000. I can tell you those people will make an effort to produce that, you know?
Yeah.
So put money in agriculture, have many more people getting the employment because that's the sector where they are. Then put more money in the tourism and trade sector. That's where another bulk of people can get employed. Put money in the industrial sector. By the way, Honorable talked about the industries. These industries that, I don't know how many people, I wish we would have some research, how many people are employed there. Then also the nature of industries that maybe we are bringing. We need to first harness the industries that promote maybe our agricultural sector, because those ones will have both the backward and forward linkages, you know. Now, and then on revenue collection, like I really want to agree with him that you cannot milk a cow which is not being fed. And unfortunately, even the people who would even pay taxes, Honorable has been in the tax entity. He knows that there are some people, actually a group of untouchables who would also contribute to the tax, who have been given tax exemptions. Either through law or through just pronouncements. That one don't tax, you see. So paying tax is left to a few people, and then they continue shouldering the burden. And if everybody who was doing something in this country, let's start there, was taxed.
Those who had
thousands
of
exactly. I'm telling you, the tax levels, even the tax would even be less.
Thank you, Margaret. Our time is fast spent. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have parting shots. I'll give you a minute and we close.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with Margaret.
She has challenged you today with her extreme
No, actually she's not very extreme, but I encourage her to have some faith in some of the things. I think for me, really my parting shots is that we need government to do a lot of listening, consultations, and also to take stock on some of the things that have not worked. I'm one of those who think that there should be an audit on some of these government projects. where we have sunk in money but are still on the ground. Including, you see, in a situation where you have a limited budget, you also have to choose the kind of investments you are going to do.
Yes,
so even when you are looking at productive expenditure, you don't wake up and build a house, roof it, then you have 2 years, you have not equipped it. We've seen some of the projects where they are stored, and that's capital. So that is an area where government has to improve. The planning, very, very important. Synchronization, but also remove this siloism of every minister trying to do his own things and not looking at the development plan. The development plan, in my opinion, was properly thought out. I have read it page by page. I am convinced if we followed it, we would see significant change. But it comes along with a lot of other things like oversight to make sure that the services are delivered.
Thank you, Honorable. And we hope to have you more on this show so that you tell us how far the 11th Parliament has gone in checking these things that we want to check. Thank you for tuning in to Focus on Parliament today. But the last thing I wanted to say, and it was in relation to what Honorable Katesh said about synchronizing this sector's security cutting across. I recently attended a dialogue about involving global security. The keynote speaker was a doctor from Israel called Dr. What is the name? Joseph Shevo. He, I think, heads a training gallery, training institute or something. And the man didn't even talk about security because for him, like Margaret said, that agriculture and food is security. He talked about the 3 key areas that Israel focused on to be where it is, and it is a success. Education. If you have a knowledgeable and literate population, go to health. If they are healthy and they are not spending the little money on this and that, on preventable diseases that we go to hospitals for here, then research and agriculture. So, and when I was looking at it, I saw that in our budget, year in, year out, we are crying that those 3 that we think are critical are not funded. That money is into consumption, 60% like you put here. So we hope that Parliament this time can check these things and say no, because that power is there. We cannot put money here. We need to put money there and put their foot on the ground. Thank you for joining us. We wait for you to join us again next weekend on Focus on Parliament. Follow us on Civic Space TV, subscribe, and we will be bringing you more of what is happening in Parliament, what the legislators are doing right or wrongly, so that we see if these discussions can change anything. Thank you to you, the panelists, for coming. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to the camera crew. Have a nice weekend.